Now, today marks 500 days since South Africa went into a national lockdown to curb the coronavirus pandemic. It was on the evening of the 26th of March of 2020 when President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the start of the hard lockdown. As the country went into the journey of the unknown, there were less than 100 confirmed COVID-19 cases at the time, with no fatalities. 500 days later, South Africans have seen the worst, with job losses, business closures, devastating deaths and a strained healthcare system. Citizens have also learned to live with COVID-19 measures such as sanitising, wearing masks and observing social distance. Let's take a look.
As South Africa today marks 500 days of lockdown, the national government is confident that it's on track in securing life-saving COVID-19 vaccines and inoculating its citizens. However, the virus has not only changed everyday people's lives as we know it, but has had a costly and devastating effect. To date, since the 26th of March 2020, statistics reveal that a little under 2.5 million people contracted the virus. At the same time, over 73,000 deaths have been recorded.
I think one of the biggest changes is the realization that a lot of people can actually now work anywhere in the world. You don't actually have to work in your own country. You can be a digital migrant. So I think this really has implications for even where you are living and everything associated with that.
With hundreds of millions of people having made the abrupt shift to working from home, the lockdown has created a divide among various workplaces in regards to tech users.
The other thing I think which has changed long time is that it's also created another divide within society and within the workplace between those who can work digitally and actually can prosper and gain so much more, and those that can't. And it's normally those that are working in more manual type of work that have really suffered the most in terms of this. And of course, I mean, it's also opening up new opportunities for work, different types of work. So yeah, and I think there's going to be major shifts in education. And these can be positive and negative. We've seen the negative effect as well from those who can connect digitally, the kids which have grown up with laptops and tablets and those who haven't. But it has also meant now that people can access courses and obtain an education which they otherwise would not have been able to have access to.
While the COVID-19 pandemic continues to ravage the globe, one futurist says employees and leaders might have to redesign new workforce strategies.
We've been working in this strange point of history where essentially we as workers are trading our time in exchange for a salary. And when we start dabbling with things like remote work, we are forced to reevaluate that contract because we're understanding as we work from home and as we try and manage remote workforces that really what we should be trying to manage in terms of that contract is an exchange of value, not an exchange of time. An exchange of time makes sense when you are clocking in at a certain time at a certain place and clocking out. But an exchange of value makes more sense when you are trying to manage people on output, which is the only productive way to manage a remote workforce. But that, of course, really makes us consider how we are structuring things like pay packets. A pay packet is a trade-off between security on the one hand, security of knowing that you're going to get a certain amount of money on a certain date at the end of the month, in exchange for giving up some of our freedoms in terms of what we're allowed to do between 9 and 5 while we are working. So if we are given more freedom to work from different locations and at different times and to be managed and judged based on our outputs and value contribution, then we're probably going to have to be asked as people that are receiving that income to also give something on terms of the security side, which means for many of us that ideal of having a once-off salary and that guaranteed amount at the end of the month is going to become more and more of a dream. And we've seen this trend playing out for a long time. We definitely were writing as far back as 2008 18 about how on LinkedIn, 40% of people's job profiles were for freelancers who have more freedom but less security. So that's the sort of world that we're going forward into.
Meanwhile, as many other countries return to lockdown to curb the spread of the virus, trend analyst Bronwyn Williams says children growing up under this new era are likely to adapt to the new normal.
Essentially, the world they're growing up in is a rules-based world rather than a trust-based world. And that is both good and bad. It allows them to feel more safe because they are contained within those rules. But at the same time, they're growing up with less trust of their peers. They're growing up in a sense of fear and anxiety, where essentially we're training these children that people are dangerous because they are carriers of virus, rather than first and foremost being trusted individuals you can build a relationship with. So we're going to see this dynamic play out as this generational cohort grows up. Whether they are going to grow up to resist that rules-based culture that we are building and raising them in to actually be the next sort of revolutionary generation, we don't know. They could also end up sort of adapting to that rules-based society and growing up to impose more rules and more constraints on the freedoms of the following generations coming up.
500 days and counting has also meant that containing the spread of the virus goes hand in hand with the loss of jobs, poor economic growth, poor health, no tourists, deaths, depression, and devastation.